So like we are saying, the implemented courses or the courses that you audit as an auditor in the ISO standard starts from clause 4 down to clause 10. And we said that it follows what we call the PDCA approach. That is, the high-level structure that was used follows the concept and the principle of PDCA approach. PDCA is something that beyond just ISO, it can be used in every aspect of life. Even in mental health. If we're talking about mental health, we use the PDCA approach. How you plan your daily activities, your weekly activities, your target, look at your mental health challenges, identify your issues, your challenges, and you have a process to actually address them. Then in the do phase, you implement them. What you are implementing is a fluid process. Meaning that as you are implementing, you are checking your performance. Then as you are checking your performance, you are also looking for opportunities for improvement. So we said when it comes to ISO standard, we have the plan, the do, the check, and the act. And the plan has 3 clauses. Remember, I told you that the PDCA is 3211. I told you 3 clauses for the plan phase, 2 clauses for the do phase, 1 clause for check, and 1 clause for act. Then for the plan phase, it has 3 clauses: clause 4, clause 5, and clause 6. Clause 4 is talking about the context of the organization, because that is where it starts from. We need to understand what is happening in the organization. What is the organization about? What is your structure of your organization? Then we now go to clause 5 that talks about leadership. Then for ISO 45001, which is health and safety, it has one extra one, which is what? Leadership and workers' participation. Because when it comes to health and safety, the extra clause 5.4 addresses issue of workers' participation. Then we now have clause 6 that now talks about action to address risk and opportunities. That talk about planning, where 6.1 talks about the issue of risk and 6.2 talk about objective. We'll talk about that later. So when you now go back to clause 4.1, it has 4 sub-clauses. The first one talk about understanding the organization and its context. What is the context? We know if you are talking, if somebody is saying something, we are asking him, what is the context of what you are saying? Because you can't be talking out of context. It means that context defines the framework that the company is into. A company that is into cement production is different from the company that is into oil and gas, into construction. Even if they are the same company, there will be some things that will be different in their operations, their activities, in everything that has to do with the organization. So context has to do with understanding the internal and external issues, challenges that can be faced by the organization, both positive and negative. That's how you can use a tool like SWOT. SWOT, that is strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. SWOT analysis to identify your internal issues and your external issues that you can face in your organization. Incompetency of staff is an internal issue. When you have poor equipment, ineffective equipment, they are internal issues. External issues can come from regulatory bodies. They can come from things that you can't control. For external issues, we use tools like PESTO, political, economic, environmental, social, technological, and legal. Things that could affect, that you have little or no control over outside the framework of your organization. So those are the external issues, and these tools are used to identify them. So when it comes to implementation, one of the things that a company does is to have internal and external issue register. Though the standard does not say that you must document it, but you need it in clause 4.3, because clause 4.3 talks about the scope of the organization. Are we together? Those that are virtual, hope you are with us. 4.3 talks about, okay, some people are trying to join. 4.3 talks about the scope, but before talking about the scope, let's now go into 4.2, which talk about the needs and expectation of your interested parties. Yes, you have interested parties, both internal in your organization and external. Your workers are interested parties. Your visitors, they are interested parties. The stakeholders, the shareholders, they are interested parties. Externally, the regulatory bodies, certification bodies, the community are interested parties. If you are using a particular raw material that is found in a particular community, they have their interest. When you use water or you generate waste, whether gaseous waste or you generate a liquid waste, your sewage system, how you dispose of the environment, because they are interested parties. So you need to understand their needs and expectations. Your customers are interested parties. So the clause 4.2 talks about you should be able to know who are your interested parties and what are their needs and what are the resources that you acquire in order to identify their needs and ensure that you address their needs as much as possible. So there are so many tools that can be used to do that. Meanwhile, again, the standard does not say that you must document it. But 4.3 now says that for you to understand the scope, because 4.3 is talking about the scope of the management system, the scope for quality management, environmental management, and health and safety management. And for you to be able to define this scope, you need 4.1. You need the internal and external issues to know them, and you need the 4.2. So indirectly, you will still need to document them, though it's not a requirement, because you need to define the scope based on this and also your processes, your activities, and every other thing that is needed. Then 4.4 is now when you now have your processes as a whole. When you now talk, most times all these things are always in the manual. You now have your process from the beginning to the end. What are you doing from the beginning of your organization to the end? Something Every single activity, every single bit must be detailed in your processes. We also have an overview and a detailed understanding. Then we now have clause 5, which is the center, the leadership. Because the kind of leadership that you would define in oil and gas, like I was saying, be different from the kind of leadership that we're looking out for in construction. So that is why context comes first. Then you now have leadership coming next. So let's talk about leadership and commitment. Management must show leadership and commitment. They must show that they are ready to actually improve in our quality management system, environmental management system, and health and safety management system. So we have that processes where they must be committed to providing resources, commitment in engaging in management review, commitment in implementing what they have said they will do, what they want to achieve in their policy, commitment in every aspect, communicating, creating awareness. They must show that example. Then 5.1 is, like I said, these people, they worship me with their heart. They worship me with their mouth, but their heart is far away from me. So it is not enough for you to just say it, that you are committed to this. You must put it, what the standard sees as the heart is the policy, the signature by the top management to demonstrate that, yes, we are committed. So there must be policy. And there are many requirements for the policy. Policy must contain some statements. Which one of them is continuous improvement, preventing incidents, ensuring customer satisfaction, ensuring environmental sustainability, reducing emissions. Whatever you want to put as your policy, you must state it there. And it must be signed by top management and must be communicated in the language that workers understand. And also to your, remember that you talk about your interested parties in the 4.2. So you must also communicate it to your interested parties. Now, that same 5.2 is also linking to 6.2 because your policy will set the framework for setting what? Objective in clause 6.2. So at the end of the day, you see the linkage between the standard. The 5.3 now talks about, okay, this is the policy. This is what we want to achieve. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to become as an organization. Then 5.3 now talk about how do you achieve it? Who will be doing what at any point in time. You now have 5.3 as what? Roles and what? Responsibilities and authorities. In order to ensure that you are able to give responsibility to people to be able to achieve what we have said we will achieve in the policy. You see, the way the standard has been structured is not just putting those things randomly. There's a purpose, there's a way why it follows that flow. There's a reason why clause 4 comes first as content before leadership. There's a reason why 5.2 comes first, 5.2 before 5.3. If you have, that's why if you are training, you need to ensure that you create that flow so that your delegates can relate. Are we together? Then we now have, for health and safety, we now have 5.4, and now talks about workers' consultation. You have developed your policy, you have developed your roles and responsibilities, and you consulting the workers. Are the workers aware of the policy? Are the workers involved in risk assessment? Are the workers involved in incident investigation? Do they engage the workers? Engagement of workers. Meanwhile, even though the standard is only 5.4, it's only in 5.4 that we have it. It's only in ISO 45001 health and safety that we have that 5.4. So you might think that, okay, it's not possible. But remember that in our principle of quality management system, one of the principles says what? Engagement of what? People, relationship management. At the end of the day, even though it's not clear, it's not explicitly mentioned in 5.4 that you should engage workers. You should, based on the principle of quality management, as a top management, you need to ensure that you engage your workers, even in quality management, even in environmental sustainability. Because who will switch off the light when nobody is there? Yes, the best is to make it automated. When nobody is inside, it goes by itself. But before we get to that level, who does those things manually? It's the workers. So there needs to be that awareness. It's the worker that uses water, plastic bottle, plastic waste, and we go and put it somewhere. No robot will do it for him. Where have you engaged him to tell him, to make him understand how to go about it? That is where awareness comes in. We'll talk about that. So clause 6 now talks about planning. What are you planning? From your clause 4.1 that you have developed, you'll not be able to identify the kind of risk that you have. That is why context comes in. The kind of risk that is in a logistic company is not the kind of risk that will be in a construction company, cement company, pharmaceutical company. There can be some similarities, but there will be many differences. So 6.1 talks about action to address risk and opportunity. Action that you want to put in place to address risk. That is where hazard identification comes in. That is where this assessment comes in. That is where environmental aspect and impact comes in. Like I told you, environmental hazard identification is environmental aspect. Risk assessment is what? Environmental. Risk assessment. The risk hazard is environmental aspect. Risk is the impact, environmental impact. So you see the similarity. And for quality management, too, there are risks that comes with quality management. When you have poor raw materials that have been procured, is a risk. So you must identify those risks. Are we together? So that you'll be able to carry out effective operation at the end of the day, what you now get to do. So from 6.2, you now have 6.2. Then that talks about objectives. We said the policy must set the framework for what? For the objective in 6.2. The objective must be smart. What is the objective? What resources is needed to achieve the objective? How will it be achieved? What is the timeline? Your objective must be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. 6.2 talk about your objective. Departmental wise, you should have objective. And as an organization too, you should have objective. And actions to achieve those objectives too must be put in place. You don't just try that we want to reduce emission by 10% before the end of 2025. It's a good objective. But what about the action to achieve the objective? What resources do you want to put in place? So that is the structure of the whole planning phase. In that place, you are already planning the overall activity for the organization. Then now come to the two phase. But I told you yesterday, do is what? Do is operation. But you can't do without the support system. That is why clause 7 comes first as what? As support. I'm taking us back so that we'll see where we are coming from. I don't just want to start today's class. Then, coming back, we now talk about the support system. And I gave you an acronym yesterday. What's the acronym? Thank you. RCACD. R 7.1 resources. C 7.2 competence. A 7.3 awareness. C 7.4 communication. D 7.5 documented information. Now, same we'll talk about resources. For ISO 45001 and ISO 14001, it is straightforward. Provide resources that the company needs. Any result that is needed, provide it. But for quality, it now go extra mile. You talk about the general requirements for resources. Now we're to talk about the people. Because part of resources is human resources. The people, they talk about infrastructure, 7.3 or so. They talk about infrastructure. They talk about something that has to do with measuring resources or things that you use to measure. There are part of resources that will be needed. For example, in the laboratory, they carry out analysis, they carry out tests. You need to ensure that you procure those equipment for calibration and for measurement. But if you don't have it, ensure that you outsource it. Something that you're supposed to test before you actually use it. You don't bypass that procedure in quality management. Are we together? And it's also talk about 7.1.6 that talk about organizational knowledge, which we spoke about yesterday. Then 7.2 now talk about competence, ensuring that to the extent necessary, based on education, experience, your workers must be competent. Either experience or by education. Ensure that they are competent to do what they do. Do you have a competency framework, competency management system, a procedure for ensuring for managing competency? How do you ensure that your workers are competent from the aspect of from the recruitment process? How do you recruit only competent people down to ensure that you are retraining them to continuously make them relevant? Whether you are recruiting or you are sourcing the competency need, whatever you are using, the cocoa is that ensure that your workers are what? They remain competent. How do you do it? Because competency is very, very important. Are we together? There's some point when I talk about awareness, about health and safety, about environmental sustainability, about quality management. Everybody has a role to play. So they must be aware. And the minimum awareness that we talk about is the signages that we see everywhere. Then the emails, the notification, the awareness programs that we do, the event that we carry out to create that awareness in the organization that yes, health and safety is priority, environmental sustainability is priority, and proper management of your quality of your own activity is also very important. Then you now go to C. Next C that talks about communication, internally and externally. What do you communicate internally? There must be a structure of communication. There must be an hierarchy of communication. Who do you communicate when you need something? There must be something that talks about communication. Most times companies have internal and external communication register. We are developing that already. Then 7.5 now talk about documented information, the document control. How do you keep records? What's the accessibility of the document? Are they always readily available? When the document is obsolete, how do you go about it? Who signs an approved document? When the document is no more in use, we don't want our document to be seen with Misuya or Madam Popov. How do you control this document? These are what we are talking about. Are we together in this class? Then at the end of the day, we now move from 7.7 to what? To clause 8 that talks about operation. For 2001 and 5001, that is health and safety and environment, it is straightforward. They have only two sub-clauses, operational planning and control. Then 8.2 now have what? Emergency response and preparedness. Operational planning and control is talking about, now if you look at operational planning and control, it makes reference to 6.1. We talk about the risk. So from your risk and your control measure, it's in clause 8.1 that you are doing what? You are implementing those control in line with how you have said you are going to control it in clause 6. So you must ensure that your SOPs that you have developed, that are documented, your work instruction, your guideline, in clause 8, they must follow that procedure. And as an auditor, you must ensure that you go through them and ensure that they are following those procedures. Are we together? Then from clause 8.1, we now have 8.2. Now talk about emergency. Emergency response and preparedness. We talked about it yesterday. How do you prepare for emergency? What is the emergency procedure? Have you scheduled your drill? What is your drill plan? What is your drill? You see that operation is across all departments. All the things that I are saying, risk assessment, everything is across all departments. Then your emergency procedures, your drills. Have you carried out your drill? Is everybody aware of the emergency procedure? Do you even know the muster point, which is the minimum? And how prepared are you for emergency? Do you have fire hydrant system? Do you have fire extinguishers around? Are they well installed? Are they well equipment for your emergency response system? They must be in good condition, because you must have identified the various emergency that you would need from your risk. You identify your risk. It's the risk that you have identified that will tell us the emergency that you prepare for. So you must be able to ensure that every risk identified, you prepare for the possible emergency. Then now have for quality, it now has other resource, other requirements. Customers need, market need, market need to provision of products and services, down to non-conforming product. Because what clause 8.2 to clause 8.7 for quality management system is doing is that it's helping you to manage to ensure that you have the right quality of product and you deliver the right service. How do you ensure? Because inside clause 8.2, I think clause 8.5.1 also, it has issue of customer communication. How do you communicate with customers? We talked about yesterday that there are three parts to communication. Do you remember that I said yesterday? What's the first one? The first communication. Marketing. Thank you, marketing. When you market your product, it's communication. That's the first form of communication. Then the second one is when they now make inquiry. They make orders, another communication. Then the next one is what? Feedback. So at the end of the day, for each of them, there must be a process for it. That must be followed. And how do you ensure that you do final product testing before it gets out to the market? And when you have non-conforming product, how do you address it? This is what clause 8 for quality is talking about. Then we now have clause 9, which is the check performance evaluation. Then we have 3 clauses across the 3 standards. 9.1, I call it MMAE, monitoring, measurement, analysis, and what? And evaluation. Monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. Because, like I said, whatever you are operating, whatever you are doing, on a regular basis, you check it. It's something that is normal in every organization. For example, as you are doing production, you are checking the limestone. Our auto sensors is automatically sensing the reading, the raw material composition. Am I wrong? So everything is automatically being detected. So as we are operating, you are monitoring. In safety, as you are carrying out your operation, you are observing. You are having record of your safe and unsafe conditions. You are observing the near misses. You are recording them automatically. You don't first carry out operation before you start talking about measurement. It happens simultaneously. But performance evaluation is in 3 phases. The one that you do regularly, daily, which is the first one, 9.1. Then one is less frequent, which is the internal audit, which is where we are now. Then 9.3 now talk about what? Management review. You must carry out internal audit. You must carry management review. They are mandatory. In fact, your monitoring, they must be documented. Because when you are not monitoring, then what are you doing? How do you know your performance? How do you improve? You can only talk about improvement when you are monitoring what you are doing. You know where you are. You know what you want to achieve. You know where you are, and you now be able to know that, okay, what do I need to do extra in order to achieve my goal? They now have clause 10, in which for 9001 is just 2, 10.1 and 10.2. Talking about general, then corrective action, non-conformity, and the likes. But for health and safety for 10.1 is talking about, for quality management, is talking about incident investigation, non-conformity, corrective action, and non-conformities. Then 10.3 is talking about 10.2 is talking about improvement. But for health and safety and for environment, you have 10.1 that talk about generally. When we're talking about improvement, what does it mean? We'll get there today. What does it mean when we're talking about improvement? What do we need to improve on? Even as an auditor, how do you check if the company is actually improving in what they are doing? Then 10.2 now talk about incident investigation, non-conformity, and corrective action, root cause analysis. How do you ensure that when there are incidents, what is the procedure for investigating it? Do you have your record? Do you keep record? How do you come up with your root cause analysis? Which tools do you use? Is it effective? Is the same accident reoccurring again? Then 10 point. Then for quality management system, do you have consistent non-conforming product? You need to do a rework. You need to recycle. You need to return a particular raw material because it was a waste. And you need to recycle it because you don't want to waste it. How did that happen in the first place? Do you find out? Did you had a proper investigation? Then 10.2 now talk about the improvement processes. So you see that the structure, when you implement it effectively, it will help you in addressing everything that has to do with managing those processes for quality, for health and safety, and for environment. So I just took my time to take us back to a summary of what we have discussed so far. So today we'll continue with internal audit. I hope you are together, our virtual students.